I guess bringing in a new White Wolf at this point in the season, a bold move and a tall order for Liam.
And of course, he wanted to honor the character that had already been set up, because he knows that he's stepping into a role. But at the same time, he wanted to make sure that his performance was authentic, that it felt like him, that he wasn't playing and mimicking anything. And so
let's just say the reaction is exactly what we expected. It is getting completely and totally annihilated by the fans. In fact, season 4 earned series low Rotten Tomatoes score as Liam Hemsworth Geralt arrives on Netflix.
I'm the most annoying guy on set because I'm saying, excuse me, you do realize that this should be happening and they wouldn't do that, and you haven't read this, that means this would be impossible. And everyone's just going, Henry, just shut up and do the thing. And I'm like, I don't want to do the thing because he wouldn't do it this way, and he can do it.
Yeah. And that's where you start to get more uncomfortable when you're thinking, there's not a...
The Witcher was supposed to be 7 seasons, but it was abruptly cut down to 5 after Henry Cavill left, and Lauren Hissrich is lucky she got that. But she does say, are there more stories? Maybe. Well, actually, there's a lot because you skipped them. But this one has to end at this point. So I think it's a nice time for all of us to step back a little bit. And that probably has a lot to do with the audience stepping back a long time ago.
It was posted last night. Netflix's Q2 report came out, and apparently they lost 1 million subscribers in the second quarter of this year, which we already saw that at the beginning of the year, they lost 200,000. The next month, they lost another couple 100,000, and they had projected that they were going to lose a couple million over the next few months. I don't really think people believed it, but it happened.
Millions of people are canceling their Netflix subscriptions. Why Netflix stock is absolutely tanking right now. I mean, it is just collapsing totally in the red. And you can see that it is on a massive downward slope this month. It's cratering. Why is that happening?
And you have a sense that you're going, is this really necessary?
I watched about 35, 40 minutes of the first episode, and I ended up texting Gary. And I just said, dude, I cannot do this. I'm 40 odd minutes in. I'm done. I've had enough. This is utter.
As the years have gone by, Netflix's Witcher series has gotten worse and worse. Recasts, rewrites, moving further away from the source material has truly damaged this show to the point of no return. There's no way that they could save it going into the last season. But now that season 4 is out and we only have 1 more to go, this show is basically hated by everybody.
Let me ask you guys something. Are you excited for Witcher season 4?
Isn't it out right now on Netflix?
Just coming out, and the reviews have started to drop. So
because I looked on Rotten Tomatoes, and bear in mind, given the backlash, I would expect a little bit of review bombing. So people who haven't seen it but who hate the concept. Oh no, you're behind, Drinker.
It's down to, is it changed?
It's down to 17.
Nobody expected things to spiral this fast, not even the people closest to the chaos. One moment, Netflix was celebrating what they thought would be the fresh new chapter of The Witcher, and the next, Liam Hemsworth was quietly boarding a late-night flight to Dubai, alone, panicked, and desperate to disappear.
And maybe once in a while, Geralt might be allowed to take part in some irrelevant fight scene, saving an innocent woman from some bandits, or saving more innocent women from being burned as witches. Are you spotting a theme here? All while pining for Ciri and Yennefer, of course. Holy shit, man, Henry Cavill must be laughing his ass off.
At first, everyone assumed it was just a quick getaway, maybe a vacation, maybe a reset. But then the story shifted, because sources started whispering that Netflix had just slammed Liam with something absolutely insane. A demand so outrageous, it didn't even sound real at first. A $120 million charge pinned directly on him after the disaster of Witcher Season 4.
A little daunting as well. I definitely felt like there was a responsibility to the fans and anyone that's watched this show before, and you know, it definitely wasn't lost on me that people cared about this world so much and these characters, and I think it just motivated me to make sure that I understood where this character was at coming into my journey and where he'd been and what his motivation was moving forward.
And while the internet was trying to figure out whether that number was even possible, a different rumor began spreading, this one even stranger. Someone claimed that Henry Cavill had flown out too, that the former Geralt, the fan favorite who walked away long before the collapse, was now heading straight to Dubai, allegedly to confront the man who replaced him. At first, people laughed it off. A confrontation? Henry Cavill? The calmest guy in Hollywood? But hour after hour, more pieces of the story leaked. More witnesses talked. More anonymous crew members hinted that something huge was happening behind the scenes. And suddenly, it didn't feel like a rumor anymore. It felt like something the studios were trying very hard to bury. Because this wasn't just about a show flopping. This wasn't just about a recast. This was about an entire franchise collapsing under its own mistakes, and everyone scrambling to figure out who was going to take the blame. And somehow, in the middle of the destruction, two actors who never planned to cross paths again suddenly found themselves locked inside the same storm. But before we get to the confrontation, before we get to how Henry ended up standing in front of Liam in one of the most unexpected moments of his career, we need to go back to the moment the collapse began, because everything started unraveling. The second Witcher Season 4 finally dropped, and the reaction was nothing like what Netflix planned. The moment Season 4 went live, fans rushed to watch, but not out of excitement. It was curiosity, suspicion, even a bit of morbid interest. For months, people online debated whether the show could survive without Henry Cavill. Netflix insisted it could. The showrunners said nothing had changed. And Liam? He tried to stay calm, smiling in interviews, pretending the weight of the franchise wasn't crushing him already. But the second the first episode premiered, the internet exploded, and not in the way Netflix hoped. Within hours, fan forums were filled with savage reactions. People weren't just disappointed, they were furious. Memes roasting Liam's performance spread faster than clips from the show comparisons popped up side by side. Cavill versus Hemsworth. Clips of Henry delivering lines with cold intensity were being contrasted with Liam's awkward attempts to mimic the same tone. It wasn't just criticism, it was a digital war, and the numbers told the same story. Viewership didn't just dip, it plummeted. The drop-off was worse than anything Netflix had predicted. After just the first weekend, retention numbers looked catastrophic, and by Wednesday, analysts were openly calling the launch one of the steepest declines for a flagship series. The hashtags came next. Not My Geralt resurfaced like a tidal wave. Bring Back Cavill started trending again. Some fans even declared it the final blow to the franchise. Inside Netflix, panic was immediate. Executives who were absolutely certain Season 4 would prove the haters wrong now found themselves scrambling for answers. Internally, people were pointing fingers. Some blamed the showrunners. Some blamed the writing. But a surprisingly large group pinned everything on one person, Liam Hemsworth. Not because he was responsible for the creative decisions, he wasn't, but because he was the face of the fallout, the symbol of the change fans never wanted, and Netflix needed someone to blame, fast. Meetings started happening at all hours. Emails circulated with phrases like urgent evaluation, brand collapse, and financial exposure. The company had spent hundreds of millions pushing Season 4 as their next big global hit. Instead, it became a cautionary tale. By the end of the week, the mood inside Netflix shifted from frustration to rage. And while all of this was happening, Liam was sitting in his home, blinds drawn, phone off, watching the entire world turn on him in real time. But the worst part? He had no idea yet what Netflix was preparing behind the scenes. And the next move they made would push him into the biggest meltdown of his career. But the chaos behind closed doors was even worse. Behind Netflix's polished public statements and carefully worded social media posts, the real conversations were far more chaotic and far more vicious. You wouldn't think the biggest streaming platform on the planet would react with panic, but this wasn't just about one bad season. This was about a multi-million-dollar IP collapsing after they doubled down on decisions fans warned them about from the start. The internal reports were savage. Financial analysts delivered a confidential projection showing that Season 4's disastrous reception could trigger a $250 million loss in long-term subscriber value. Marketing heads were grilled for misrepresenting audience confidence, and executives who had personally pushed for the recast suddenly pretended they had concerns all along. And in the middle of all this finger-pointing, someone floated a dangerous idea. If we can't fix the numbers, we can at least recover damages. At first, it sounded like frustration talking, a meaningless threat thrown into the air by an angry executive. But the more the board discussed it, the more they convinced themselves that someone, somehow, had to be held financially liable. Not the writers, not the directors, not the producers. No, they focused on the actor whose face was plastered everywhere, Liam Hemsworth. Suddenly, Netflix's leadership started framing the entire disaster as a performance failure. They argued that Liam didn't live up to expectations, didn't connect with audiences, and didn't maintain the momentum Henry had left behind. It didn't matter that the scripts were weaker, the marketing was messy, or the show had already declined long before Liam stepped in. They needed a scapegoat. They needed a name they could point to, and Liam was the easiest target. Meetings became increasingly hostile. Legal teams started drafting internal memos exploring whether Netflix could claim financial damages due to what they described as talent underperformance. It was an absurd argument, but the company was desperate enough to take it seriously. And then came the number. One analyst estimated that the franchise had lost $120 million in global impact due to the backlash. Suddenly, that figure became a rallying cry inside the building. Not because it made sense, but because it gave the board something tangible to latch onto. Within days, Netflix executives were drafting a formal notice demanding Liam cover $120 million in losses. It didn't matter whether it was enforceable. It didn't matter whether it was moral. They were angry, embarrassed, and losing money fast, and they wanted someone to feel the consequences. Meanwhile, Liam was already spiraling. Friends said he wasn't sleeping. He avoided calls, avoided cameras, avoided the internet entirely. He was overwhelmed by the backlash, the memes, the constant comparisons to Henry. He felt like he'd been thrown into a war he could never win. But the moment the Netflix notice landed in his hands, everything collapsed. The pressure, the shame, the fear of becoming the industry's biggest punchline. And instead of fighting back, Liam did the one thing no one expected. He ran. He packed a suitcase, grabbed his passport, and booked a flight with no return date. Because in his mind, disappearing was the only option left. And that's when the unbelievable part began. When the notice finally reached Liam, he wasn't ready for it. He was already drowning in pressure, already overwhelmed by the backlash, already questioning whether stepping into Henry's boots had been the biggest mistake of his career. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared him for a letter claiming he owed Netflix $120 million in reputational and financial damages. At first, he didn't even believe it was real. Who would? It sounded like a bad joke or some sick tabloid prank. But then he saw the signatures, the legal language, the cold corporate tone of a company that had shifted from panic to aggression. And suddenly the room around him felt smaller, tighter, suffocating. Friends close to Liam later said he looked like he'd seen a ghost. One moment he was pacing, trying to talk himself down. The next, he was sitting in silence, staring at the number like it wasn't even human. $120 million. A number that didn't just represent money. It represented failure. It represented embarrassment. And most painfully, it represented the fans' rejection of him. He knew Netflix couldn't legally extract that kind of money, at least not without a battle. But the message behind the demand was loud and clear. This collapse is on you. The lawyers he called told him what he already suspected. The entire thing was ridiculous, probably unenforceable, and likely just a desperate corporate tantrum. But that didn't stop the emotional damage. You can't throw a number like that at someone who already feels responsible for destroying a franchise without leaving a scar. Then came the second wave of insult, the leak. Somehow someone inside the Netflix legal chain let the existence of the $120 million claim slip to an insider source. Within hours, whispers started circulating through private Hollywood group chats. Within a day, entertainment blogs had picked up the story. And within 2 days, social media was tearing into Liam with a level of cruelty that bordered on surreal. People were making jokes about him being the most expensive mistake Netflix ever made. Others were creating fake GoFundMe pages, roasting the situation. Even industry commentators, people who should have known better, couldn't resist taking shots. Liam was watching his career unravel from every direction his agency called, his manager called, his family called. Everyone wanted answers, damage control, explanations. Liam couldn't even bring himself to pick up the phone. The pressure was too heavy. The insult was too fresh. The idea that the entire world thought he personally owed $120 million? It destroyed him from the inside out. The irony? Netflix hadn't even expected the leak to go public. But once it did, they stayed silent, not defending him, not clarifying the situation, not doing anything to stop the avalanche. Liam had never felt more alone. Then, something inside him cracked, something between hopelessness and fury, and he made a decision he didn't plan, didn't analyze, didn't even think through fully. He left. No warning, no calls, no statements. He packed a single suitcase, grabbed a hoodie and sunglasses to avoid attention, and booked the first overseas flight available without asking a single question. Destination, Dubai. The one place he thought paparazzi would be too distracted, fans too far, and Netflix too powerless to reach him quickly. It was impulsive. It was panicked. It was desperate. But at that moment, running felt like the only thing he had left. And instead of the clean escape he imagined, what waited for him there would only make things 10 times worse. Liam landed in Dubai just before sunrise, stepping off the plane with a baseball cap pulled low and a pair of sunglasses that did absolutely nothing to hide the exhaustion in his face. He wasn't running toward anything. He was running away from the cameras, away from Netflix's pressure, away from a world that wouldn't stop reminding him he wasn't Henry Cavill. He checked into a high-end hotel under a different name, hoping it would buy him at least a day of anonymity. But the problem was he wasn't invisible. Not anymore. Not after the internet had turned him into the center of one of the biggest entertainment fiascos of the year. At first, things seemed quiet. He walked through the hotel lobby unnoticed, ordered room service without being recognized, sat on the balcony staring out at the skyline, trying to figure out what his life had become. But the calm didn't last. Dubai is a city where tourists are everywhere, and fans from around the world pass through every week. It only took one person, one fan who recognized him despite the glasses and hoodie, to snap a blurry photo, a grainy picture, posted casually on social media. Is Liam Hemsworth in Dubai right now? It had no context. reports. No details, no confirmation. But within hours, it spread like wildfire. Suddenly, people were asking, why was he there? Was he hiding? Was he meeting someone? Was it connected to the alleged $120 million Netflix demand? YouTube channels started pumping out theories. Twitter threads filled with speculation. Some fans insisted he was running from Netflix lawyers. Others joked that he was escaping to avoid paying the bill. Liam saw every headline, every cruel joke, every screenshot. He stopped leaving his room altogether after that. Meanwhile, the pressure back home kept growing. Netflix's silence only made people more suspicious. The entertainment media painted Liam as someone who had cracked under fan pressure. Even people who never watched The Witcher knew the story by now. But the most unexpected reaction came from one person no one saw coming: Henry Cavill. When Henry heard Liam had fled, he wasn't amused, angry, or triumphant. He was concerned, genuinely concerned, because no matter what the internet believed, Henry never wanted Liam to fail. He never wanted to be the reason someone spiraled into a crisis. The two weren't enemies. They weren't rivals. They were just two actors caught in the same storm from opposite sides. And when Henry learned about the alleged $120 million demand, something in him shifted. Friends close to Henry said he felt a responsibility, not for the show, not for the recast, but for the way this entire situation had weaponized fans and studios in the ugliest ways possible. He knew how savage Hollywood pressure could be. He knew what it felt like to be blamed for things outside your control. So he made a quiet decision. No announcement, no press call, no public statement. Henry booked a flight to Dubai, not for a vacation, not for a business meeting, but to look Liam in the eyes and tell him something that nobody else had the courage to say, something that would change the course of this entire story. But Dubai wasn't the escape Liam hoped for. It was the place where everything finally collided. Henry Cavill was thousands of miles away when the Dubai photo hit the internet. He was on set in the middle of a long shooting day, surrounded by cameras, cables, and people who had no idea that his world was about to shift again. Someone from his team approached quietly between takes, hesitant, holding a phone with the screen already pulled up. Have you seen this? Henry expected another meme, another Witcher joke, maybe another headline twisting his name into clickbait. Instead, he saw a blurry image of Liam in a Dubai mall, tired, hunched, trying to disappear into a crowd that wouldn't let him. And the caption underneath made Henry freeze. Liam spotted in Dubai. Rumors say he's hiding after Netflix's $120 million demand. For a few seconds, Henry didn't move. He just stared at the photo. There was something about Liam's expression, that mixture of fear, exhaustion, and embarrassment that hit him harder than anything else the internet had thrown at him, because Henry knew what it was like to be swallowed by a franchise's expectations. He knew what it was like to deal with studio pressure, constant scrutiny, and fans who had already decided what Geralt was supposed to be. He knew the emotional weight of trying to satisfy a crowd that didn't want change. But most importantly, Henry knew the truth. None of this was Liam's fault. Liam didn't sabotage the writing. He didn't dictate creative decisions. He didn't push Henry out. He didn't change the show's direction. He was handed an impossible task and expected to survive it. So when Henry saw that Liam had fled, not for a break, not for work, but from absolute emotional collapse, it hit a nerve, a deep one. And the more Henry read, the worse it got. Confidential leaks about Netflix's internal chaos, claims that Liam had been thrown under the bus, whispers about executives blaming him for decisions he had no control over. Henry didn't raise his voice. He didn't complain. He didn't pace. He just quietly said, "I have to go." His team didn't understand at first. Was this about press? Damage control? A statement? But Henry wasn't thinking about Hollywood manipulation or fan wars or the show itself. He was thinking about the human being stuck in the middle of a digital wildfire. Someone who tried to carry the weight of a franchise that wasn't built to support him. Henry booked a flight that same night. No social media post, no announcement, no hints. He simply disappeared from set, boarded a plane, and flew straight to Dubai with nothing but a small bag and a purpose nobody else fully understood. Yet, the strangest part? The moment he landed, he didn't feel anger or resentment. He felt clarity. He wasn't going there to attack Liam. He wasn't going to gloat or rub the failure in his face or reclaim his throne. He was going because Liam needed someone who understood, really understood, what this franchise had put him through. Someone who wasn't part of Netflix's pressure machine. Someone who could finally tell him what nobody else had. This collapse isn't on you. But fate had one more twist waiting. Because when Henry finally found him, hiding in a private lounge away from cameras and crowds, the confrontation that followed wasn't the heated clash people imagined. It was something far more raw, far more honest, and far more revealing. And what happened in that quiet corner of Dubai would shake both of them and the entire industry in ways nobody could have predicted. Liam didn't recognize the footsteps at first. He was sitting alone in a dim lounge tucked into the back of the hotel, a place chosen specifically to avoid people. His hood was up, his shoulders sagged forward, and he looked like someone who hadn't slept in days. But when he finally lifted his head, he froze. Standing a few feet away was Henry Cavill, calm, composed, dressed simply, but carrying a presence that filled the whole room. For a moment, Liam thought he was hallucinating. Out of everyone in the world, Henry was the last last person he expected to see there, and definitely the last person he wanted to face in that moment. Liam shifted uncomfortably, trying to hide the shock, but Henry stepped closer with a steady voice. "Liam," he said softly, "we need to talk." Liam didn't respond. He couldn't. The shame was too heavy. Henry took a seat across from him, waiting patiently until Liam finally whispered, "I know what you must think." But Henry shook his head immediately. "No, you don't." For the first time since the collapse began, Liam looked someone in the eyes without fear, and he saw something he didn't expect. Empathy. Henry didn't gloat. He didn't smirk. He didn't look victorious. He looked tired and sad and frustrated, not with Liam, but with the entire situation. "What they did to you isn't right," Henry said quietly. "This pressure, this blame, none of it belongs to you." Liam scoffed under his breath, a bitter, broken sound. "Tell that to the internet. Tell that to Netflix. They think I destroyed everything." Henry leaned forward. "No, Netflix destroyed it the moment they ignored the fans, the moment they stopped respecting the story, the moment they put you in a position no actor could survive. You walked into a fire that was already burning." Liam swallowed hard, trying to keep his voice steady. "They're saying I owe them $120 million. They're acting like I single-handedly ruined the franchise." Henry didn't even blink. "You didn't ruin anything. The writing was already falling apart. The audience was already upset. You were the scapegoat they needed to cover their own mistakes." For a moment, Liam said nothing, just stared at the floor, the weight of months of stress crushing him all over again. Then his voice cracked slightly. "I didn't want to fail, Henry. I tried." Henry cut him off gently. "I know you did. Nobody could have saved that season. Not you, not me, not anyone. They put the blame on the wrong person." Liam finally exhaled, the tension in his shoulders loosening just a little, and then Henry said something that hit harder than anything else that night. "You never took anything from me, Liam. You didn't take my role. You didn't take my legacy. You tried to carry something impossible, and the backlash you're facing, it should never have been yours alone." For the first time, Liam's eyes filled with emotion. Not fear, not shame, but relief. The kind that only comes when someone finally tells you a truth you've been too afraid to believe. But then Henry added one more thing. The part that would define the entire encounter: don't disappear. Don't let them break you. Because if you run from this, they win. Not you, not me, them. Liam didn't respond right away. He didn't know how, but something shifted in that moment. Something heavy, something painful, something cleansing. And as the two sat there, far from Hollywood, far from studios, far from fans and expectations, the truth of the entire collapse finally spilled out. Liam revealed things Netflix demanded behind the scenes. He revealed pressure he'd been under from day one. He revealed creative restrictions, impossible expectations, and the weight of stepping into Henry's shadow. And Henry listened, not as a rival, not as a former Geralt, but as someone who had lived through the same storm. What happened in that quiet corner of Dubai wasn't just a confrontation. It was the unfiltered truth finally breaking through. But even after that moment of honesty, the fallout was far from over. Because outside that lounge, the story was already leaking, and Netflix was about to face consequences of its own. Word wasn't supposed to get out. What happened in that quiet Dubai lounge was meant to stay between Henry and Liam, two actors caught in the crossfire of a corporate disaster they didn't create. But Hollywood leaks faster than a sinking ship, and within hours, whispers began to spread across private group chats, studio emails, and media circles. It started with a simple rumor. Henry Cavill flew to Dubai to speak with Liam. That alone set the internet on fire. Fans immediately assumed confrontation, drama, conflict, the whole avalanche. But the real problem began when someone inside the hotel, someone who overheard more than they should have, posted a vague message online. The conversation between Henry and Liam. If people knew what was said, Netflix would be in trouble. That's all it took. Within minutes, entertainment accounts started spreading the hint. Within an hour, YouTube channels were pumping out videos analyzing every possible angle. By the end of the day, a journalist published an article claiming that Liam had revealed massive behind-the-scenes pressure and that Henry had confronted him about the mess Netflix's PR department woke up to a nightmare. Suddenly, the company wasn't being criticized for a bad season. They were being accused of bullying an actor, weaponizing fan backlash, and sending an outrageous $120 million demand that sounded more like intimidation than business. And the more they tried to bury the story, the worse it got. Fans didn't believe Netflix's denials. Industry insiders refused to stay quiet. People who worked on Season 4 began leaking small details, nothing explosive on its own, but enough to confirm the atmosphere was bad behind the scenes. One former crew member anonymously stated, "Liam never had a chance. The pressure they put on him wasn't normal. He was set up to take the fall." That quote went viral instantly. Meanwhile, Netflix executives scrambled to regain control. They held emergency meetings, drafted statements, considered blaming misinformation, even debated releasing internal reports to prove they never demanded the $120 million. But every plan they came up with only made them look more guilty. Fans rallied behind Henry and Liam, united for the first time. Some defended Henry for stepping in when the studio wouldn't. Others defended Liam for cracking under an impossible situation. Many attacked Netflix for ignoring the fan base, disrespecting the story, and then punishing the actors for their own mistakes. The narrative had flipped completely. Suddenly, Liam wasn't the villain. Netflix was. And Henry, he became the unexpected bridge between two worlds, the fans who adored him and the actor who inherited a burden no one should have carried alone. As the story kept spreading, Netflix's stock took a noticeable dip. Investors demanded answers. The board wanted explanations. explanations. Pressure mounted from every direction, and the dam finally broke when an industry insider leaked the biggest detail of all. Henry and Liam's conversation did happen, and Henry told Liam the collapse wasn't his fault. That quote alone trended for days. Memes, edits, fan videos, commentary, breakdowns. The internet was relentless. Netflix couldn't outrun the truth anymore. Their recast had failed. Their handling of the fallout had failed. Their attempt to place blame had backfired in the worst way possible, and the company was now facing a full-scale PR disaster. All while Henry and Liam remained silent, watching from the outside as the truth finally spread without their help. And that brings us to the moment everything changed. The moment fans, studios, and Hollywood realized this story wasn't about a failed season. It was about what happens when a franchise forgets what made it powerful in the first place. The Witcher Season 4 was supposed to be a fresh start, a bold new direction, a chance to prove the doubters wrong. Instead, it became one of the most chaotic collapses in Netflix history, a perfect storm of fan backlash, corporate pride, reckless decision-making, and pressure placed on the wrong person. Liam never should have carried that burden alone. Henry never wanted to be part of the fallout, and fans never intended their criticism to be weaponized by a corporation desperate to avoid accountability. But in the end, the truth surfaced anyway. Season 4 flopped, not because one actor failed, but because the foundation had been crumbling long before the recast. Netflix ignored the fans, ignored the direction of the novels, ignored the criticism. And when the consequences finally hit, they tried to pin it all on Liam. That's why he ran. That's why Henry stepped in. And that's why Dubai became the unexpected center of a story that exposed far more than a bad season. It revealed the pressure actors face behind the scenes. It revealed how quickly studios blame the easiest target. It revealed how fragile even the biggest franchises are when they lose sight of their audience. Henry didn't go to Dubai for drama. He didn't go to win anything back. He went because someone needed help, and because he refused to let the wrong person be crushed by a mistake he didn't make. And Liam? He didn't return home as a villain or a failure. He returned as someone the world finally understood. Someone thrown into an impossible situation who survived it long enough for the truth to catch up. As for Netflix, the company will spend years trying to rebuild what it broke. The Witcher may continue, or it may fade away, but the legacy of Season 4 will always hang over it as a reminder. You can replace an actor, you can rewrite a script, you can pour millions into marketing, but you can't force fans to love something that stops respecting the heart of the story. So the real question now is this: will Netflix learn from this collapse, or will Season 4 become the moment the franchise never recovered from? Only time will tell. But one thing is certain, the world will never look at this saga the same way again.